Even allies of Donald Trump are now admitting that his plan for tariffs are going to drive up the cost of pretty much everything for consumers. So why do it? One of the ostensible reasons he says he's launching this trade war is to end the scourge of fentanyl, which is a real and enormous problem facing the U.S.
A new report issued by the CDC says fentanyl now replaces heroin as the deadliest drug in America.
Authorities overwhelmed. So many deaths in Los Angeles, the school district is now putting the overdose reversing drug Narcan in every school.
A more than 1,000% spike in overdose calls, likely caused by drugs laced with fentanyl.
It's an extremely powerful synthetic opioid that contributes to about 100,000 U.S. overdose deaths a year. And for the past decade, it's been laced into lots of other drugs. It's caused users of those drugs to overdose unwittingly. The problem is massive. Back in 2021, for instance, U.S. life expectancy dropped to its lowest level in 2 decades. And CDC data showed that even after COVID-19, of course, which was driving a lot of that, drug overdoses, most notably synthetic opioids like fentanyl, were the primary drivers of shorter American lifespans. So this is a enormous problem, and it's a problem that is so big, it doesn't have a fast or easy fix. There's no satisfying silver bullet. But something seems to be changing recently. After years of relentless rises in overdose deaths, New York Times reports, the United States has seen a remarkable reversal. For 7 straight months, according to federal data, drug fatalities have been declining. The difference is dramatic. It's the largest decrease on record. Now, there's a lot of reasons at play here. For instance, more funding for better treatment, education and prevention measures. That's largely coming from the federal government. In fact, back in September, when people started first asking about this drop in overdose fatalities and its causes, Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra told us on this show about their strategy, that they had done harm reduction measures that were taking hold across the country, making test strips and Narcan, a drug that reverses an opioid overdose, more readily available. So this was partly HHS federal policy. All of that was important, steadily helping to sort of beat back this scourge. But drug policy experts tell the Times they believe there's another surprising reason. That's changes in the drug supply itself, which are in turn influencing how people are using drugs. So for the first time since 2021, the Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, says the potency of street fentanyl in America has gone down. Pure fentanyl is becoming scarcer and also more expensive, in part because of law enforcement efforts, the White House says. There's another factor, and this brings us back to Trump and tariffs and what he's trying to do now. Last year, President Biden had this big bilateral meeting with the Chinese President Xi in California. Don't know if you remember this, but we covered it. He had a live press conference. And the big takeaway from that meeting was that both sides signed on to an agreement on stopping the flow of the chemical precursors that are largely generated in China and used to make fentanyl, to stop the flow from China to Mexico and the U.S. It was a rare area of open cooperation between U.S. and Chinese officials amidst a fraught relationship these days, helping reduce the supply chain of fentanyl in this country. So again, this is all a bunch of factors working together. There's no simple silver bullet here. But all these policies combined, the harm reduction, the increased treatment, the test strips, the attacking the precursor chemicals, it seems to be working. They're having an effect. The fact that this is working is, I would contend, a story that almost no one in America knows. Wasn't part of the Democratic campaign. And it's a good reminder of a sort of hard, well-worn truth. Building things and fixing things is a lot more difficult than breaking them. Solving difficult problems like an overdose epidemic requires a bunch of people coordinating their efforts, and the doing of that work, of governing, is much, much harder than populist posturing about the problems, which is what, to be fair, Donald Trump is quite skilled at.
When you lose a son or a daughter to fentanyl, or a wife or anybody else, but when you lose a son or daughter, your life is destroyed, their lives are destroyed, they've destroyed so many families. It comes through Mexico. Something's got to be done.
That something for Trump is to get tough, to crack down and stop these other countries from humiliating us by flooding us with drugs. But again, there's a record to look at here, right? Trump campaigned on stopping the fentanyl crisis when he won in 2016, and he created a task force after he won. And as you can see on this chart, despite all the hardline politics and his tough talk and his best efforts, what happened? Oh, overdose deaths just kept going up on his watch. They plateaued a bit in 2018 and then skyrocketed, almost as if promises are easier than results. But what's happening there in the end? It's actually going down for the first time. And this is the fundamental issue we face. The guy that we just elected is not interested in the difficult, serious things you have to do to fix stuff. But he was adept at channeling people's frustration, genuine and righteous, correct frustration and rage about things like 100,000 Americans dying of fentanyl every year, these big complex problems, and making them feel seen and agreeing with them that the system sucks. But that does not actually fix our problems or their problems. This is not what he's in it for. The good news here is that it is possible to make improvements in people's lives. And sometimes we don't know how. Sometimes we know some of the solutions, and we have to try a bunch of stuff, and it takes hard work by a lot of people over a long time, including thousands of those, bad bureaucrats in the federal government. That's the good news. The bad news is that I think it's become harder than ever for anyone, the Democratic Party or the Harris campaign or Joe Biden in particular, to communicate and sell that basic truth to the American people.